Was Paul far-sighted? Of course he was, you say. He was a prophet. But I meant a different far-sightedness. Since glasses had not been invented, could he no longer see to read and write? Was this the messenger from Satan sent to buffet him, which he mentioned in 2 Corinthians 12, 7-10? There is much speculation about this thorn in the flesh, this messenger from Satan. Various diseases with complex Latin names have been suggested. An attack from Satan should be fairly dramatic. But what if it was just the effects of ageing? For much of my life, I've been able to get by without glasses. From my early years, I was short-sighted in one eye and needed glasses to clearly read the blackboard from the back of the classroom. But after graduating from lecture theatres, once I started work, I found I hardly needed them. This was the case for several decades. Meanwhile, when my younger brother, who had never needed glasses before, turned 40, he found his arms were too short. He could no longer read or use a smartphone without glasses. It wasn't until I was well past 50 that my vanity was punctured. Gradually my good eye became less able to focus on things close up. Computer screens seemed to be at exactly the distance where neither eye could focus. At work, I had to start wearing glasses again. Oh, that's better. I never wear them in the street, but in the supermarket I have a real problem reading prices on the lower shelves. I can still read a book with my short-sighted eye, but without glasses, the page is just a blur with what was once my good eye. For most people, long-sightedness affects both eyes. Can you imagine how this would have affected Paul? He could no longer read the scriptures for himself. He could no longer write. Is there evidence that this was his problem? He said the Galatians, in 4:15, would have torn out their eyes and given them to him if they could. Why would they want to do that? In the same letter, in chapter 6:11, he draws attention to the size of the letters he's writing with his own hand. And while we may confuse letters and letters, Paul does not use the word epistle here. He's talking about the alpha beta variety. It is clear Paul had secretaries write his letters. For example, in Romans 16:22, Tertius identifies himself as the writer. Why didn't he write it himself? Is it because he couldn't? And that unless he had memorised a scripture passage, he needed someone else to look it up for him? What kind of apostle cannot read? How frustrating and even humiliating. And perhaps this explains some of his less than accurate quotations. How did Paul react to the deterioration in his eyesight? He begged God to heal him, to take away this thorn in the flesh. And when God didn't, he accepted it as God's way of preventing him from becoming too conceited. In verses 1-6 of the same chapter, he seems to imply he had once been caught up into heaven and seen great visions, but now, I surmise, he could not see the letters on the page in front of him. God's glory was displayed in his weakness, in his utter dependence on others to allow him to fulfill his life's mission. And he got by with a little help from his friends. To wrap up, I think it is highly probable that Paul was long-sighted. Almost everyone has some deterioration in their eyesight after they pass 40 or 50. Paul hints he had a problem with his eyes, and the loss of the ability to read and write at the time of his greatest activity and productivity would have been hugely frustrating for him. He knew that God could have taken away what was such a trivial and yet such a major annoyance. Is it beyond reasonable doubt that this was his thorn in the flesh? No, we cannot know for sure. However, all of the other suggestions are pure speculation with no evidence. The eyes have it.